So last week we had a tragic shooting that happened in Australia, specifically in the Bondi Beach area, where 15 people were killed because of two radicals. And instead of just collectively condemning this whole thing together and mourning the death of the people who got killed, we got grifters and hacks trying to use this shooting as weapons against Muslims and immigrants. And the thing that collapses their narrative completely and pisses them off the most is the fact that the hero who saved the people that day is actually an immigrant Muslim man himself. Ahmad al-Ahmad, unarmed, bleeding, throwing himself into danger to protect strangers. That's the reality. And the moment the public learned he was Muslim, you could feel a tremor of panic inside the people whose entire worldview depends on Muslims and immigrants being the villains and not the heroes. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't process it. So they tried to rewrite him. Oh, he was actually an Israeli man. No. He was a Lebanese Christian.
ראינו את הרוע בשפלותו, וראינו גם גבורה יהודית בשיאה. אני ראיתי בדרך הנה סרטון של יהודי שמתנפל על אחד המרצחים, שומט ממנו את הנשק ומציל מי יודע כמה נפשות.
Anything to avoid the truth staring at them right in the face. A Muslim immigrant man was the hero of the very attack they try to use as a weapon against Muslims and immigrants. Isn't that ironic? It wasn't confusion, it was pain. The pain of bigots watching their narrative collapse. The same kind of pain you saw when a Utah police chief publicly lamented that the Kirk shooter was white.
For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us. That somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country. Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I had hoped for.
He literally said the shooter was one of us. Of course, not out of pride, but because of sheer disappointment. He was angry and disappointed because he couldn't offload that attack on Muslims or blacks or immigrants or Latinos or anybody who's not white. He was upset that the killer came from the demographic he exempts from collective guilt. It's the identical emotional reflex playing out again here. They needed the Bondi hero to be anything but a Muslim immigrant because reality shatters the architecture of their prejudice. Now let's zoom out for a second. If we're having a serious conversation about dangerous groups, then we should look at the facts. The vast majority of shooters in the United States are white. Decades of FBI statistics, academic analysis, and public databases converge on the exact same finding. White offenders form the largest mass shooting demographic by a wide margin. But when the shooter is white, it becomes a lone wolf, an isolated case, a troubled young man. But when the shooter is Muslim, all 1.8 billion Muslims across the world are radical terrorists. When the shooter is a black person, it's gang culture. When the shooter is Latino, it's a border crisis. Every single other group is collectivized, whereas the group that is actually responsible for the vast majority of shootings are individualized. And the clearest global example of this double standard is in Christchurch. A white supremacist in New Zealand walked into 2 mosques and murdered 51 Muslims in their place of worship while praying. He live-streamed the massacre on Facebook like it was entertainment, and then published a manifesto dripping with political ideology. He radicalized himself in plain sight, targeted a minority community, and carried out an ideologically motivated slaughter. And what happened, you ask? For days and weeks, major outlets and political commentators resisted calling him a terrorist. Hesitations, euphemisms, softened language. He was a gunman, a shooter, a suspect, anything but what he actually was. As if murdering 51 Muslims in their place of worship as they pray because of who they are is not the definition of terrorism. The same refusal to apply the labels that they would have used had the perpetrator had been Muslim. That is not subtle. It's not academic. It's not hidden. It's structural. And then we get this weird propaganda line being thrown around about 90% of Muslims being decent people, but 10% of them are actually radicals. A statistic completely made out of thin air, not backed by anything tangible, nothing real. Just a numerical dog whistle used to justify collective suspicion on the world's second largest religion. And then you have figures like that clown Patrick Bet-Davids, who's literally an immigrant Iranian man himself, who built a scammy career here in America, benefiting from the very immigration systems he now tries to undermine to score political capital.
So I don't care if 90% is peaceful. The 10% true believers, jihadists, that hate what America stands for, that hate the Western ideology, that hate us protecting women, us allowing women to vote, that hate the freedom of speech model that we have, that hate the Second Amendment model that we have, that hate the capitalistic society that we have. And we have to sit on the sidelines and be worried about being called Islamophobic? Really? I lived in Iran for 11 years and I saw what this was all about.
He pushes anti-immigration paranoia in a country that would have rejected him if it followed his own rhetoric today. That's not logical. It's opportunistic self-invalidation. Now, here is the immutable truth. If you're going to generalize hundreds of millions of Muslims because of isolated extremists, then you must, by the same logic, generalize white Americans because they commit the majority of mass shootings, the majority of rapes, the majority of PDF files are white, the majority of assaulters are white, but the people pushing these narratives will never do that because this was never about consistency, never about safety, never about facts. It's about maintaining a hierarchy where one group gets the privilege of individuality and every other group gets collective blame. The Bondi hero, a Muslim immigrant man, sadly destroyed that hierarchy for them. His courage disarms the lie. And that's why they try to rename him, repurpose him, completely rewrite him. Because the truth is fatal to the narrative they depend on. And nothing threatens bigotry more than a reality that it cannot bend. But I want to hear your thoughts on this whole thing. Do you agree, disagree, have a different point of view? Let me know in a comment down below and we can discuss this whole thing together. Oh, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and you guys know the spiel. See you guys on the next one.